Good morning. I'm Judy Terzotis, President and Publisher of the Times-Picayune, The Advocate, and the Acadiana Advocate. And welcome to our 2023 Economic Outlook series. Everywhere you go, it seems people are talking about the economy and how it's impacting their daily lives. Today's panel will cover those topics that are front of mind for all of us as we look forward to the new year. Thank you for watching.
I'm Fred Kalmbach, Managing Editor of The Advocate, and welcome to our 2023 Economic Outlook Summit. We've got four panelists with us here today to discuss what lies ahead for the Baton Rouge area economy. But first, let me introduce Tim Boone, our business editor, who will help lead the discussion today. We're going to start with a presentation that puts numbers to the social and economic forces driving our community. And then we're going to move into our panel discussion with experts in real estate, banking, tourism, education, and healthcare. But first, a note about our sponsors who are making this event possible. We'd like to thank Entergy, Visit Baton Rouge, and the Office of Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome. And before we move on, we have a message from them.
Hello, everyone. Mayor Broome here to wish you a happy new year and welcome you to the Advocate's Economic Outlook 2023. Without a doubt, East Baton Rouge has experienced tremendous change in the past few years, but I'm excited to share with you that our Baton Rouge economy is stronger than ever. We have the lowest unemployment rate on record and the highest student enrollment in history. We all need to pull in the same direction so we can seize this opportunity. That's why I've partnered with the Baton Rouge Area Chamber and Visit Baton Rouge for an economic development and tourism action plan. We're connecting people with jobs and improving our perception. There's so much that I could share about all the things that we're doing to cultivate an inclusive community and economy where the next generation has a vision for their own opportunity and success. I look forward to the future growth of our city and parish, and I want to thank all of you for joining us in the work as we continue a plan of action to move Baton Rouge forward.
This is what we work for. The moments you live for. The joy. The heart. The wonder. At Entergy, we're dedicated to powering each moment. Today and for future generations. So we're leading the way with a cleaner, more reliable power grid to power every day. Because these moments matter. We power life. Entergy.
Ready?
Now we're going to hear from Adam Knapp, President and CEO of the Baton Rouge Area Chamber, which leads economic development for the Capital Region. Adam's going to give us a snapshot of economic activity. Then we'll move on to our panel discussion. So Adam, if you could share your screen with us, we'll get started.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Fred and Tim, for inviting me, and thanks for the sponsors for making this possible. That was an awesome ad, by the way, from Visit Baton Rouge. It got me pumped about Baton Rouge. And it's a beautiful day. I'm looking out the window. It's Chamber of Commerce weather, which is great and great most of the time. It's not great if you're bald, and the bald head of a Chamber of Commerce is almost just ironically painful that I'm going to sunburn as soon as I walk outside. So that's going to be my afternoon. I want to share with you some of the numbers. So first of all, if anyone wants more than I'm going to go through, this is going to be a quick glance at some of the economic data that we released last month. You can find all of it in all its excitement of numberdom at brac.org, brac.org/research, and you'll see our full economic outlook report on our website. I'm going to flip through these slides relatively quickly. You can post comments and questions, and of course, hopefully we'll get a chance to get into some discussion of this with the panel that's about to come up. So first thing is just to look back at some of the announcements, and I'm going to go from the bottom up on this slide. We announced a new 5-year strategic plan last year for BRAC, for the 9 parish regions economy, really highlighting what you heard a moment ago, the importance of talent and recruitment of talent, as well as in the mayor's comments in a project we're working on with Visit Baton Rouge. But you'll see some of that work started last year. We launched a new BR Works platform. It has been regarded by some of the tech companies that back it as nationally as one of the best national examples of a regional jobs portal. We've had a great kickoff of the usability of that data. For a job seeker in the Baton Rouge area, it's the number one place you're going to be able to find really great job postings. You can upload your resume and use that. That was something we kicked off last year. We also released some of the data for how students are finding internships on Handshake. We also pushed last year with our community college and four-year partners and the state legislation to help make sure that credits can transfer easily between 2-year and 4-year institutions across the state. That's now a universal accessibility bill that passed last year, as well as legislation to create a computer science advisory commission to try to really drive more tech education into high schools, something that we've seen advances in other states, and Louisiana has some catching up to do. We also launched last year our first ever Minority Business Accelerator, sponsored by ExxonMobil. We had 40 applicants. We had 11 spots. That is our first Minority Business Accelerator. We took this example from multiple other cities. We also saw funding last year in the legislative session, something probably a lot of folks are excited about, is close to $1 billion between dedicated revenue streams to build a new Mississippi River Bridge crossing in the Baton Rouge area. They also narrowed down the possible locations for that and are on track to get the environmentals completed. Overall, in economic development activity, we saw 16 project wins, close to $3 billion in capital investments from those projects, and a little over 600 jobs, new annual permanent direct jobs from the announcements of those projects. So it gives you a snapshot of the activity and some of the initiatives that we were working on last year. Now diving into some of the data. Now, we've seen some interesting results sort of what's been happening post-pandemic, if we can call this moment that. We had a significant dip, as is shown on this chart, of non-farm jobs in the Baton Rouge area in 2020. You can see that drop was substantial, bigger than almost any drop we saw in the 2008 recession, as well as the blip that we had after the 2016 floods. This was much more stark than that, but we have seen a nice rebound now at about 400,000 non-farm jobs in the Baton Rouge area as of the last report, and a forecast this year and the following year of close to 9,000 new jobs potentially being added. That's a aggregated look between what Dr. Lawrence Scott releases every year, what some national economic modeling that comes out from a group called Lightcast, what used to be MZ, and some data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We've also shared, and this is in the bigger report, that we've seen that total employment is actually growing even faster than that. That's been a change since the pandemic, that folks that are working in remote working jobs, folks that are taking other types of employment, more self-employment, those are also driving up total employment. The number is about a little shy of 410,000 in total employment in the Baton Rouge area, which has been an interesting switch to see that gap between non-farm jobs and in total employment. So we also did a survey to ask employers in the Baton Rouge area last fall what they expect to happen this calendar year. And this shows you what is generally an optimistic picture, even as we've seen interest rate increases nationally and concerns at a national level about a potential recession at some point at a national level. That is not what you hear in surveying regional business leaders. Almost 80%, a little under 80%, expect their business revenues to either increase or stay the same in 2023. And on employment, you can see that they are expecting a little over 80%, about 83% expecting their employment to either increase or stay the same heading into this year, which is a positive overall outlook for what they're expecting for their business activity. We also were really fascinated, and you heard me comment on this a second ago, in what's been happening in entrepreneurship and small business startups over the last 2 years. Since 2020, we just tallied this, about 38,000 new business applications across the 9 parishes in the Baton Rouge area, which has led to, as you can see in this chart, 2,700 new establishments, new businesses with an address that have been formed out of those business applications. And you can see it's not just in 1 or 2 parishes. It's not just in suburban growth. This is region-wide and at higher rates than you're seeing across the U.S. as a whole. And that increase, as you can see, kind of has been fun to watch what that's looked like over the course of time to see that activity happening. Almost all of our parishes, I believe it's actually all of our parishes, are in the top quartile of new business formations nationally across, compared to all counties across the U.S. Just shows you how unique this is to our capital region economy to see so much new business formation happening across the 9 parish area. Just the last year of data of 2021 to 2022, 1,700 new businesses formed during that time. What you heard in the mayor's opening comment a moment ago is absolutely true. This is in that green little box, that's the Baton Rouge area. That green line you see kind of trending from 2020 to the present is the trend line for Baton Rouge in that green line. And we are at 2.6%, the lowest unemployment rate on record for the Baton Rouge area ever. So just take a moment to comprehend that that's really what's driving a lot of what we see happening across the capital region economy. You can also see that trend when we compare that to other areas. So on this, you can see that comparison to Louisiana, to the United States, as well as to what we do is we aggregate kind of all of our what we'd call our peer regions across the South, places like Birmingham, Greenville, Oklahoma City, Mobile, Richmond, Virginia. When you aggregate their overall unemployment rates, you can see that ours is still lower below theirs. And that's really impressive. It also, unfortunately, spells the challenges that we see across the Baton Rouge area economy, which is significantly tied to the challenge of recruiting people. And that's what you see in this numbers is that we have, I think the number is 3 open positions in the Baton Rouge area of folks looking for employees compared to the number of every single employee that's out there potentially unemployed looking for work. So that's 3 open jobs for every person unemployed looking for work in the Baton Rouge area right now. What we also have seen is a change in some of our narrative about migration. And so while we know that there are challenges in the Baton Rouge area, what's been interesting is to see the change in overall migration. As we saw in the census data a couple of years ago, the Baton Rouge area is growing and is growing faster than forecasts have traditionally been expecting. Right now, that's also in the last year of data showing that our net migration into the Baton Rouge area is happening at a faster rate, and it's happening at a faster rate than some of our peer regions that I was referencing a moment ago when we were talking about unemployment. Here you can see just behind Oklahoma City, Greenville, and Columbia in that net migration per 100 residents. We try to do that in a way that you can compare us apples to apples. We also show on the chart to the right the numbers themselves, and 8,000 folks, almost 9,000 folks we had in terms of net migration, more folks moving in than moving out overall. I'm going to drill a little deeper into that number in the next couple of slides. We have, however, shown, and this is something that I think is really important for all of the community, but especially the business community, to grapple with, is that while the total population is growing and our net migration is positive, we've continued to have this stymieing challenge of 25 to 44-year-old migration. So this chart shows you from 2015 to 2021, we've had now net negative migration, loss of folks in this age range. We wanted to drill into that a little bit further, and our staff and our business intelligence team really do a great job. They're putting all this data together, but they showed you what's in that chart on the right, which is when you break down age ranges within that bucket, we actually are gaining in the 35 to 44-year-old population, but it's really in that 25 to 34-year-old range that we've got to focus our efforts to both retain college students after graduation and to make sure that we're recruiting new folks to replace those who choose to leave with new folks that move in for opportunities in the great job market that we have here in the Baton Rouge area. To that point, we are at our highest ever on record, at least for our tracking it, number of college students in the Baton Rouge area, which is to say potentially our greatest asset as a region is our college student population, close to 60,000 students across the Baton Rouge area, across all of our higher ed institutions, both public and private. Here you can see in that largest blue bar there at the top is LSU, 37,000 students at LSU. At Southern, you see their numbers going up now, 7,800 students, 9,600 at BRCC, 2,500 at River Parishes. and over 1,200 at Fran U, adding to that comprehensive picture of 58,000 plus students at higher education institutions across the region. And I hope we can drill into that conversation. It's really important that we think more and more about how all of our businesses use things like the Handshake app to recruit specifically college students 2-year and 4-year into internships while they're still students, and hopefully give them a real good, clear picture of what opportunities they have here in the Baton Rouge area for jobs. So with that, I think that takes us through the deck that we've shared. All of this and more is available again on our website at brac.org/research. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you, Adam. Now it's time for Tim to introduce our panelists, who should all start popping up on your screens in a moment. Here they come. So, Tim, if you could do that for us.
Hey, thanks, Fred. Our first panelist is Dr. Willie E. Smith, Chancellor of Baton Rouge Community College. Our second panelist is Jill Kidder, President and CEO of Visit Baton Rouge. Up next is Trey Nelson, Director of Economic Development and Community Initiatives for Ochsner Health. Next up is Ginger Laurent, CEO of the Louisiana Bankers Association. And finally, it's Thomas Delahaye, President and CEO of CST Multifamily Real Estate Services. And we're going to start the questions with Tom, being that he was the last one introduced. Tom, here's the first question is, how is Baton Rouge's real estate market shaping up for 2023, particularly in the multifamily housing market?
Well, there are two main sectors, Tim, in the multifamily market. One is, of course, market rate, which has no rent restrictions. And the second is affordable. The market rate, new construction and development has really come to a great slowdown because of rising interest rates and rising construction cost. Affordable, which the components to finance that, of course, are debt, tax credits, and sometimes what we call gap funding, some type of funding either from the federal or state level. That we have been concentrating on that more recently because it's just easier to put the deal together, and there's much larger demand for affordable housing in the Baton Rouge market. I want to give a shout out in particular to Mayor President Boone, Metro Councilwoman Shauna Banks, and Metro Councilman Darrell Hurst. They have been particularly supportive of our efforts, including the entire Metro Council and the Capital Area Finance Authority with Mr. Mark Drennan in trying to help move affordable housing forward. It's not a quick process. Our latest development in Baton Rouge is under construction on Plank Road, one of the first new developments in the Plank Road market in many years. It's a $70 million, 300-unit complex that's affordable for with 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. It's great. The demand for it is greatly needed. What is even a larger demand, though, but more difficult to put together as a development, is senior affordable. There's a almost unlimited demand for new or for any type of senior housing, 55 years and older, in the Baton Rouge market.
All right. Up next is Jill Kidder. Where does Baton Rouge fit into the Louisiana tourism industry?
Well, thank you, Timothy. We're thrilled to be here today and participating with all these panelists in this economic development discussion. Where it stands in the Louisiana tourism industry, I think, is only second to New Orleans. And of course, New Orleans is its own state, or as we refer to it sometimes, is its own country in as far as the tourism industry is concerned. It's such a strong market. We have had a very positive year in 2021 and 2022, but our numbers in 2021 were extremely strong. We had 7.2 million visitors that came to Baton Rouge. They spent $1.1 billion. I don't think people really realize how important of an economic driver tourism is in our economy. Those revenues, those spent dollars, produced over 126 million in state and local taxes, which that's just huge. And then, as Adam said, we are also a big job producer here in the East Baton Rouge area, with nearly 15,000 jobs in our industry. And we just believe that in 2023 that those numbers are going to continue to climb. We saw occupancy levels in 22 about the same as 2021, but the good news is that our average daily rates in our hotels were up about 9%. So those things were very important to the economy in Baton Rouge.
All right, well, thanks. Next up is Dr. Smith. How did COVID affect enrollment at the state's community colleges, BRCC in particular? And what were some of the factors involved in, how enrollment was affected?
Yep. Thank you, Tim and Fred. Happy New Year, guys, to all of you. Certainly an advocate, and great to see you guys' faces on the new year. You can imagine higher education and all of higher education saw a significant challenge during the COVID. Not just community college, but all colleges throughout the country. I think our system total fell about 4%. That includes BRCC. And many of the factors contribute to students not having the appropriate vehicle to get to class, or was trying to adapt to the new environment, for online learning. But for the most part, we have pretty much adapted and addressed some of those issues. And I would tell you, as Adam's snapshot showed, that we are now back above pre-pandemic number. And we had a largest historic enrollment growth this past fall of about 9,700 students, which shows that we're trending in the right trajectory. Part of that was our ability to learn from the pandemic, to adjust instructional model, to install new state-of-the-art instructional technology, and create student-centered schedule. But more things, Tim, to come out of this pandemic, that we need to be more receptive on students now who are choosing the online or hybrid option and not coming to face-to-face. And so the challenge for us, as many community colleges and college in general, is how we're going to serve the population now on making sure that they have an opportunity to access to learning in a remote environment, an online environment. And so we're preparing ourselves, which we saw a significant increase this past fall, and certainly our spring enrollment number is trending in the right direction. And so those factors that cause concerns and cause challenges for us still exist. However, we need to be very innovative on the process we take moving forward to be able to serve students as we go forward.
Hey, Tim, you still there?
Sorry, I had my mic muted. Up next is Trey Nelson from Ochsner Health. First question is, how has COVID permanently changed the way medical care is being provided in Baton Rouge?
Hey, thank you for having us here today, Tim and Fred and Advocate. And once again, great to see so many familiar faces out here in the new year, like Chancellor Smith said. I think COVID really changed the way that hospitals look at pretty much every level of our operation, right? So from the way that we're innovating in our health technology, the way that we're interfacing with patients and community members, no more of the days of just build it and they will come, right? Where you have a brick and mortar facility and people will find a way to come get healthcare. We're now looking at what does preventative care measures look like? How are we keeping people out of emergency care situations? Obviously, we will still provide all forms of emergency surgeries and, of course, the actual emergency room itself. But what are we doing to give people a space to where they have the education to know how to keep themselves healthy? And we're really looking at the fact that Louisiana consecutively has ranked within 49 to 50 on the health indicators rankings across the country. And what are the things that we can do today to make sure that future generations are living healthier lives and they have the resources they need? So we're doing a lot, all the hospitals collectively, and also healthcare organizations in both Baton Rouge and across the state are doing a lot of preventative care measures. So screenings and looking at doing health fairs, looking at going out to the schools to educate students, even as young as, the K through 4 or pre-K through 4 in some cases, right? And just making sure people know what resources they have in their backyard. And also we are going and bringing the resources directly to people.
All right. Well, thanks, Trey. Up next is Ginger Laurent. Ginger, what are the main areas of caution and optimism for banks and other lenders heading into 23?
Good morning, everyone. I think the optimism, and Adam talked so well about it, had the numbers to show that there is activity in the Baton Rouge area. The banks are saying the same thing. They are seeing their clients with some optimism and some activity in their work. And then I guess the caution side is just uncertainty in the economy in general, across the country. Interest rates are going up. The staffing issues, some supply chain issues that are still there. So those uncertainties with the stock market, we see different information coming from around the country. So that the caution is that the banks just want to keep in close contact and close conversation with their clients and their customers to make sure that they are walking with them along the journey and making sure that they are ready for when the customers are ready.
All right, thanks. And last up for the first round of questions is Adam Knapp. Adam, and you kind of touched about this in your presentation. We've seen historically low unemployment, but also there's an enormous demand for workers in the region. And how are businesses adjusting to this reality of finding workers in such a tight labor market?
I think everybody is looking for new and creative ways to recruit. We've seen kind of a surge in interest in every different variety of search that you can imagine to try to find that. I think, unfortunately, we're also seeing, or fortunately, depending on where you sit on this, that the wage rates at almost every wage tier are going up to try to address that. And you're seeing that kind of factoring into inflation effects across the country. That's not any different here in the Baton Rouge market. So I think you're seeing that it is also affecting kind of incomes as well. That the price of workers is going up. In the charts that we put together for the economic outlook, Tim, we actually had a chart that showed what we tried to describe, probably not fair, as the Amazon effect. What's happening across the lowest tiers of incomes, but across really all income tiers, to see whether they are rising at a faster rate since we've seen kind of wage pressures. That's both pandemic related, but it's also that folks like Amazon who are moving up to $15 an hour and above for entry level work essentially are kind of spreading out that effect across the entire economy. And it's not just one employer, but it's interesting to see how that effect is panning out. So I think you're seeing that, Tim, that they're looking for creative ways to recruit. They're getting closer to our higher education partners to try to recruit students straight out of school or get them into apprenticeships or internships while they're in school. And then what we're pushing, and I know a lot of the partners on this panel are helping us work on this, is how do we actually see that high schools even play a bigger role in that? And we expect to continue to advance that work this calendar year with a close partnership, both with East Baton Rouge Parish Schools, but across the 9 parish region, to see more students looking at career choices. If they're not going toward a 4-year school, that they know what their career options might be if they go straight into the workforce. And we expect to see more high school internships that are really being built as a way to help introduce that to students over this calendar year. Hope that helps answer your question.
All right, I'm going to pick up from here and ask some more questions. This is for Tom, and this doesn't directly, I guess, it isn't just about the multifamily aspect of real estate, but have you noticed or have you picked up on any chatter about the effect of the FEMA, flood insurance changes on the real estate market?
Thanks, Fred. Great question. Yes. The insurance cost has skyrocketed, not necessarily just due to FEMA, but because of the things that the multiple hurricanes that have occurred in South Louisiana. And we have seen anywhere from a $50,000 to $100,000 increase in premium for our insurance because of, not just because of FEMA, but because of the concern about the weather. And it really puts a tough situation for not only our market rate properties, but also for our affordable properties. Most recently, we just opened and leased up a 55-year-old and older in Denham Springs. And the increase there was over, based on what we were budgeted, it was over $100,000 increase. We have to find the money to make things work. I mean, it's going to work, but it's also the impact is whether it's affordable market rate or single family housing. It's the insurance impact, the weather, what's FEMA done is all going to have a limiting impact. A limiting effect on what's happening in housing markets.
Well, thank you for that answer. I think it's something a lot of people have been thinking about over the past year. The next question is for Jill. Given the success last year of the Garth Brooks concert, how does Baton Rouge continue to bring big names in like that? Because that was a success, I think, on everybody's. Everybody would consider that a success.
It was an extreme success and a once in a lifetime experience for those of us who got to attend as well. So I think that Adam and with Brack and certainly others of us are all working extremely hard together, just as we did before, to take a look at what those types of events and see if we can do something very similar in the coming year, or at least in 2024. So stay tuned.
Well, along those lines, like, what's the hardest thing about landing that type of act? I mean, from our viewpoint, from Baton Rouge's viewpoint.
Yeah, and I think it's obvious. We sit between New Orleans and Lafayette, and I do think that there's some challenges to accommodating a group like that, especially at LSU with so many events that are going on in those facilities already. So we just have to really work hard and put a pencil to it, and that's what we're doing, trying to figure out who's next.
Well, good luck. This one's for Willie. How much is the state's industrial sector still driving demand for students in community colleges? I mean, how big of a slice of your work centers around that industrial sector?
A really great question, Fred. We saw Adam's snapshot about the economic demand here in Baton Rouge and our 9 parish region, but the current industrial expansion is a major driver of workforce demand, and we expect that to increase. We're also seeing heavy investment in infrastructure like roads and bridges, broadband expansion, coastal restoration, and more new jobs are coming to this region. So colleges like BRCC, 2-year colleges certainly will need to be at the forefront to meet some of these demands, such as we have a CDL and a heavy equipment program that you can take and live as a few weeks or a few months at a very low cost. We're seeing significant number of people wanting to take our short-term, low high demand careers in those short-term programs, and we need to be able to capitalize on it in order to support our industry partners. So institutions of such and such as your two-year institution, who are drivers of some of the workforce demand in our area, must be able to capitalize it and be able to help support our industry partners to be able to expand. We also know that most of that is going to err on the side of time and money. Many of the students don't have the time or the money, so we're going to need policy changes to support us to continue to be able to train those individuals for those jobs, especially as we continue to see those jobs continue to decrease here in the greater Baton Rouge area.
Thank you for that answer. Next up, Trey Nelson. What would you say are the biggest healthcare issues facing Baton Rouge at the moment? I know there's always these big, there's always the same kind of healthcare issues we have, but is there any that particularly comes to mind right now or in the next year?
I would say a big piece is definitely access. We recognize, I think the COVID pandemic really put a spotlight on the fact that access to care is an issue, both in Baton Rouge and really across the country. You have some areas where you have a lot of different healthcare resources, in some cases, within a business or within a literal neighborhood. And then within a same city, similar to Baton Rouge, you have some spaces where there's just not a lot of brick and mortar healthcare facilities in the area. And we know that access to care is going to be a big issue. We know that the kind of main health disparities and also the kind of traditional chronic conditions that we see in healthcare, like diabetes and hypertension and the effects of smoking that we see a lot in Baton Rouge, are going to be things that we need to continue to keep on our radar as healthcare leaders within the community. And then last, I'd say workforce development. We have been saying if healthcare groups were doing what we're doing now around investing into workforce development programs and partnering with our higher education institutions and getting into the high schools and giving students different career opportunities, if we had been doing some of these things 10, 15 years ago, we probably would not be seeing some of the disparities in available workforce. So we really want to focus on making sure that we're not only creating job opportunities, but also, to Adam's point earlier about Handshake and some of these different innovative ways of reaching out to people, we are actively finding new ways of making jobs more accessible. So it's not just you go on a website independently and try to find a healthcare job and maybe your application gets lost in a large portal, but we are actively going out and getting in front of students and getting in front of even non-traditionals, right? People who maybe they have been out of high school for 10, 15, 20 years, but they would have interest in healthcare, and just making sure they understand you don't have to just be a doctor or nurse, although we want plenty of doctors and nurses, but you have plenty of other healthcare jobs that are out there. So just making sure that we're properly informing and doing outreach around the space of workforce development too.
On that issue, there was, over the past year, certainly a year ago, there was a lot of focus on the whole traveling nurse phenomenon. Got it right. Is that still going strong, or has that subsided somewhat, or can you give us an idea of what's going on there?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because the agency nurses were needed and welcomed, and also we appreciate all the work that agency nurses and all agency staff, including the respiratory therapists and the doctors and the psychologists, everyone who came in through agency, it was needed. And it's always been needed, and it was needed especially during the COVID pandemic. And it's kind of created a space where you do now have this subset kind of economy within healthcare where students are graduating from school and they're saying, hey, do I want to go work for a hospital, or do I want to go into agency? Or they're working at a hospital or healthcare group, and they're saying, do I want to stay at my company or do I want to go to an agency? So it's going to be a big task for healthcare organizations over really the next 3 to 5 years to figure out what are they doing from both a salary perspective of making sure people are compensated appropriately for the work that they're doing, but also a workforce employee engagement perspective too. A lot of people will stay at an organization that they have a high affinity for, right? They enjoy working there, especially in healthcare where you have people that genuinely want to help other people. I think that's why most people get in the healthcare industry. But it is a task that no one has found the right solution for. And I think there's always going to be a space for agency staff members across the healthcare sphere, but we do need to figure out how do we make sure we're properly engaging our team members who are a part of the organization to give them incentives to want to stay.
Thank you for that. Ginger, this one's for you. I think the bankers are always in a position to kind of have a finger on the local economy, especially with small business. What are the biggest obstacles you're hearing from entrepreneurs in getting capital? I think you're muted.
I talked to several bankers in the area, as we were kind of preparing for this, and they are obviously staying close to their clients and customers and talking through issues that might happen. Interest rates rising does slow down lending. So they just want to make certain that I think the capital is available. I think the uncertainty, inflation, interest rates rising is just not sure where it's going to land. And so I think the clients are just being a little more cautious and making sure that when they move forward on new activity, they are doing so with all the information at hand. So I think capital's there, but we see the movement maybe a little slower, just to make sure that all the questions are answered before they move forward with an activity, a new activity or an expansion or that kind of thing. So I think that probably is the biggest hurdle is the uncertainty. I mean, we see some of the similar things and other panelists talk about. Clients are looking for staffing and making sure that they are in a position to do an expansion or move into a new market because of all of those factors.
This question, next one for Adam, kind of plays off that in a way. And Adam, what do you, and you touched a little bit about this in your presentation, but what do you hear most about inflation and who's being affected the most by it in the business community?
So we actually have been doing a lot of data tracking to try to determine the differences, if there are any, between kind of regional inflation effects versus national inflation effects to understand how it's affecting just generally the price of goods and the price of labor and what that means, in the pocketbook of residents. And we're going to be putting out more on this. We have a Substack we call BR by the Numbers that goes each week into different data points. That's one of the ones we spend a lot of time really drilling into. The biggest thing I want to hit on is just what we've seen in the cost of labor. We see the price of labor continues to go up as labor shortages, as I mentioned earlier, are a significant issue, and that has been really significantly driving up issues. Cost. The other thing is we've seen is the price of housing. There's data in our presentation that shows as a relative factor of overall household expenditures, housing is a big piece of it. And housing prices, because of kind of changes in availability of housing for a lot of reasons, those prices of housing for both rental and for home ownership have been going up as we've seen less supply in the last 2 years. And that in general has been driving up costs overall and driving inflation across the market. So from a consumer standpoint, that's two places that you're seeing the effects. The biggest thing on supply chain shortages that have been happening for employers. Employers continue to sort of communicate to us their working through those concerns and have seen that go up and down. It's been kind of a moving target of availability and that has affected some costs of goods to their companies. So those are probably the three ways. I want to just mention one quick thing on the last question too that Ginger was talking about. We just put out a document last month called Startup City. It's really kind of an annual report on small business and entrepreneurship that were made available across the community. But to those businesses that are dealing with challenges of access to capital, or what Ginger described is really making sure that they're ready when they walk into their banks. There's a lot of great resources to help small businesses around the Baton Rouge area. And we wanted to make sure that we sort of pulled together all the services for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the small business ecosystem that are out there. And there are a wealth of small business services. We employed a person last year who just does one-on-one counseling to small businesses to help them matchmake to know which is the right small business service that can help them with whatever their issue is or challenge might be in their period of growth, whether they have one employee or 50. We want to make sure that they get matched up with resources. So I just wanted to show that there are some great resources and services out there in the entrepreneurial and small business ecosystem in the Baton Rouge area.
All right, I'll kick it back over to Tim for the next round of questions.
All right, well, we're going to go back to Tom. Kind of going back to the subject of interest rates. What have kind of the increase in interest rates done to the demand for multifamily housing? Have y'all seen like an increase in demand for multifamily housing? And what's this done to construction of multifamily housing? The fact that it costs more to borrow money.
Well, it's been, thanks, Tim. Great question. It's been an absolute killer for any type of multifamily housing. For example, in the development that I mentioned, Reserve at Howell Place on Plank Road, or the one that we're getting ready to close on sometime in February or March, the Reserve at Jura Place on Jura Road. And a quarter point increase in interest rate means at least at a minimum $1 million reduction in the size of the mortgage. Now, with the reduction in size of the mortgage means you can't afford as much either space or units or quality or whatever. It may end up actually killing the deal. So the rise in interest rates, I know the Fed's moves don't directly impact the interest rates that we deal with. Our rates are usually based on the 10-year Treasury and some percentage point above that, but that has been up and down, but it can be an absolute killer. One thing I wanted to add, we mentioned workforce and everything, that the misconception people have about not just living in an apartment, but also living in affordable housing. The way the new rules with affordable housing called income averaging, we can house people that have incomes up to 80% of the area median income. So you're talking about people with incomes of $60,000, $70,000, the teachers, policemen, things like that. So there's a huge demand for that. But unfortunately, back to interest rates, that slowed down our process. This latest deal that we're hoping to close in March on Jura Road will probably be the last one for a while in the area without any kind of additional funding either from the federal or state level.
All right, well, thanks. Up next is Jill. Just kind of want to talk to you. What's the most important initiative or project underway to improve the tourism industry or the tourism offerings in Baton Rouge?
Good question. Thanks so much for asking, Tim. I think that what we saw last year was that we needed to put a plan in place as we're coming out of the, COVID and the hit that our industry took, over the last couple of years. And so we did. We put together a strategic plan. And of course, it has 4 unique initiatives that we will be focusing on the next year. And of course, the first one is always making sure that we're doing our core, accomplishing our core mission, and that's marketing and selling the destination to individuals, pleasure travelers, groups, conventions, conferences, sporting events, all of those kind of things, and also to the media. I mean, we just in the last week, we were with the Lieutenant Governor and the Louisiana Office of Tourism out in Pasadena, showcasing our Louisiana float, and had a rider and a walker in the Rose Parade, and had an opportunity to speak to media from all across the country and showcase Baton Rouge in that way. So that's an important component as well. But we've established a new destination experience department here at Visit Baton Rouge, because we know if we enhance the visitor experience, and we have happy visitors, they're going to stay longer, they're going to return more often. And the most important thing is they're going to tell others. So we want to be sure that we're making memories for every visitor that comes. And then we are going to be focusing on what I have called the potholes, those things that cause bumps in the road for our visitors, either to want to come back or to stay longer, as I've said, or make them happy when they're here. And so those are things like, mobility, safety, cleanliness, improving the current facilities that we have. And of course, as we've all talked, it's workforce, because those are our ambassadors. Those are the people who make people happy when they're here. And I think our industry has experienced some of the toughest climb back from a over 50% reduction in our workforce during the COVID, years. And so I think that is certainly a great challenge for us as well in this industry. And so we're going to be working with the Baton Rouge Area Chamber and the city of Baton Rouge, and working on those issues in the coming year. But we're looking forward to a great year. I think our international travelers are going to be coming back. Our conventions are going to certainly increase in numbers. Our dockings for all of our riverboats have increased. There's almost 200 dockings here in Baton Rouge now, and we're expecting for 2023. So all of those things, in addition to our culinary scene, you'll be hearing a lot from Visit Baton Rouge about promoting that great culinary scene that we have here in BR. So we're looking forward to the year.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Up next is Dr. Smith. What changes in state policy would most benefit community colleges?
Oh, good question, Fred. And I want to pivot to, you asked something earlier about the factors related to COVID, but these are factors that pretty much are going to answer this question that we're noticing that students and individuals that normally come to community college, time and money, and the value of degree. Most folks now are not enrolling in any college at all because they don't value degree or time and money, meaning they don't have enough time to access the mission, to get a job, and get the skill that they need because they got to take care of themselves and their family. Or normally do they have the money in many cases. And so state funding for short-term and non-credit program is vital for us to meet the demand and provide access to more and more of those students. Earlier, Adam showed a snapshot about the net migration, about the age. Our average age here at BRCC is 26 years of age. In all of our community colleges, we got students that are walking our campus who are 30 and 40 years of age who don't have the time or money to stay in our institution for 2 and 3 years. So we need more resources to support them in those high demand, innovation credentials that are short-term and short nature. We're also doing advocacy with our federal congregation about pay for short-term program. This is the direction that I think the state needs to take in order for us to meet the needs of the industrial sector that continue to grow, to help with the infrastructure and the heavy operators that we need in this state. But we're going to need more folks who are going to be able to have access to those with funding through short-term programs. And so I think if there's anything that we can change in policy, to start looking at how we drive more funding for short-term and non-credit programs.
Thank you so much. Trey, over next to you. How does Oshner kind of continue to invest in expansion efforts in this market, with the interest rates issues and the rising inflation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. Thank you for that. It's definitely something that's impacting us, right? With coming off of the past 3 years where you, in a very complicated way, mix federal, state, local, and hospital, profit funding all into kind of one vehicle, and you use that to kind of push yourself through the past 2 to 3 years of the COVID pandemic to a space now where a lot of that additional funding is not available. And you're also looking at the rise of interest rates. And to the point that Tom made earlier about building new facilities, I can't name a single healthcare facility that I've been a part of developing over the past 2 to 3 years where we have not been directly impacted by either the issues on like the supply chain earlier on, but now the cost of things being so expensive. I mean, building a new facility now costs so much more than it did previously. So it's something that we're looking at, but we still have a commitment to continuing to invest in Baton Rouge and continuing to invest in innovative healthcare resources. I'd say one of the most recent examples is the new 65 plus clinic that we opened up in Bocage area off the Jefferson Highway. That is a new clinic model completely that's focused on Ochsner absorbing the entire cost of every aspect of caring for the patient, right? And it touches on like the insurance piece and the way that we do insurance reimbursement to where Ochsner is financially incentivized to keep the 65 plus patients healthier and out of situations where you have like a hip fracture or a fall or things of that nature. So we're continuing to look at what are the new types of clinic models that we can bring to Baton Rouge, where in 65 plus's case, you have a social worker, a pharmacist, fitness instructor, all within that one clinic. So the people who go there are not having to go all around the city to get their resources. But then additionally, we're also looking at the space of telemedicine and telehealth. It's such a broad terminology, but when you break it down, you're looking at applications that allow you to communicate with your doctor and the clinical team in real time. So you're not having to get on a phone and sit on the wait line for a while before you can ask somebody for something. You can also order your medications directly off of your phone. We're also looking at, what is the digital connectivity to your just vital monitoring look like? So digital blood pressure pumps that connect directly to your application there. You can send real-time updates about what your vitals look like. It's, hey, your blood pressure is looking up. Is it really up, or are your kids still at home from Christmas break and you're stressed out, right? Those kind of things that people don't have the time to think about on a day-to-day basis. So everything around just the advancement towards digital medicine resources and then investing back in the current clinics that we have in the area.
All right, thanks. This will probably be the last question, and it's for Ginger. How are community banks adjusting to the pressure of rising interest rates? We've talked about interest rates a lot.
Absolutely. We talk about interest rates every day. I think same as we've talked earlier. I mean, the banks are watching, managing the interest costs that they have and interest rates that they are able to charge to have that spread. They recognize that they have to be competitive. They have to make a profit. And so trying to manage those things is a constant. I talk with banks every day who are having these conversations in their offices, and that they are working toward building that balance. So I think that it's an ongoing process.
All right. Well, I think we're out of time, and I want to thank all our panelists today for agreeing to take part. And again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, because we certainly couldn't have done this without the support of them. That's Energy and Visit Baton Rouge and the Office of Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome. And finally, I'd like to thank all you who watch today, especially our subscribers who support our work every day. If you're not a subscriber and you would like to be, please visit our website. And we certainly would support or appreciate your subscription. So have a good day and take care.